The Columbus Blue Jackets continue to surprise, but it's Jekyll and Hyde. They are great at home and struggle on the road. Jay Foster of Locked On Blue Jackets is here to discuss that and what Columbus can do to stay in the playoff hunt in the second half. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets. If you win that first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. It is great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Blue Jackets, Jay Foster. And Jay, this Blue Jackets team, I don't think a lot of people had high expectations, and yet right now, they are right in the middle of the hunt for that wild card spot in the crowded Eastern Conference. What has been the reasons that this team has been so successful despite the adversity they've faced all year?
I think there's a couple of reasons, or there's a couple of names, I should say. I think everyone, no one would really pick the Blue Jackets to make many waves this season, even before the Gaudreau tragedy happened, kind of at the end of the summer. And then after that, I think everyone was like, man, this team might be worse than the expansion era Washington Capitals, who I believe won 8 games total. Blue Jackets are better than that. I still don't know if they're a playoff team necessarily, but they are an improved team in basically every single metric from last season, which is honestly kind of impressive considering when you look at the roster this year versus last year. A couple of reasons for this. Number one is that Zach Werenski is playing like he is a top 3 defenseman in the entire league. I think the only defensemen that have better underlying metrics than him right now are Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar. Quinn Hughes out injured at the minute, so he's going to get Norris votes if he keeps this up. He's currently on pace, I think, for 85 to 90 points this season, which as a defenseman is wild. And the other thing is Sean Monahan has been such a revelation for this team. He's leading forwards in scoring, I believe. Him and Kromachenko, who has been surgically attached to Monahan since he arrived. Since December 23rd, I believe Sean Monahan is actually leading the NHL. He's got 15 points in his last, I think, 7 or 8 games. He's been incredible for this team. And obviously, the Gaudreau loss is awful and sad and terrible. This feels like the best possible place for him to be, and it's been really, really nice seeing him smile over the past couple of months. It looks like he's having fun, and no one would have blamed him if he looked like he was being tortured the entire season, but he's coming to work, he's smiling, he's playing well, and I think that's lifted the Blue Jackets up a lot. Because if he can do it, then why can't they?
Makes sense. Goals against have been a problem all season. Is this a goalie problem, a team defense problem, or a combination of the two?
Yeah, a little of column A, a little of column B. The goaltending has been improved on last season. It's still not really where the team needs it to be. It's not where I wanted the goaltending to be, and I think we've talked about this on this show before, which is they don't need a Vezina level goalie. The team is good enough, I think, to put up with average goaltending. Unfortunately, right now they're not getting average goaltending. Elvis is inconsistent. He was great last night until he wasn't. You get 2 great games out of Elvis, and then you get 2 terrible games out of Elvis. The backup, Daniil Tarasov, has been almost unplayably bad most of the season. He played 1 game at the end of December. That was his first game in the entire month of December, I believe. And he allowed 4 goals on about 25 shots. So he didn't really do a lot to help his case. So like the goaltending isn't where they need it to be, which is the main thing. The other thing is, and this has improved actually in the last kind of little bit of games, is that for a minute there, the penalty kill was just atrocious. Like they set an NHL record for number of games allowing a power play goal in a row. I think they allowed a power play goal in like 14 straight games or something insane like that. So like that's picked up a little bit. They're no longer bleeding short man advantage goals, but this is a team that, like, when you look at the goals that they're scoring, they should be way higher in goal differential than they are right now. And that's a problem because they're scoring a lot of goals, but they're also allowing a lot of goals, which is like it's not going to win you a lot of games if you're scoring, if you're scoring 4 goals every game but allowing 5, not ideal.
Not ideal at all. Do you think they try to address that somehow before the trade deadline, whether it's a defenseman, a goalie, a defensive forward?
I don't think so. Like, I wouldn't. I find Don Waddell's moves difficult to predict sometimes, whether that's just because I'm used to, like, we had a long stretch of, Jarmo Kekalainen is going to do this because that's what he's done every year for 8 years or whatever. So I find it more difficult to predict what Don Waddell is going to do. I do think that for better or worse, this is just kind of what the team is right now. I don't think Elvis's contract is particularly movable. I don't think Tarasov's contract is particularly movable right now. My guess is that he maybe goes on waivers, and if they lose him, then they lose him. So I don't see them getting an upgrade in goalie during the season. This feels like a summer thing. And I think that was always going to be the case. They really wanted to see, okay, can they get Elvis back up to the level that he was at for his first couple of seasons in the league? And again, some nights he looks great, and some nights he looks not so great. So it's a tough one. Defensemen, I think, again, they're kind of pretty set with where they are. I think they'd love to upgrade if they could, but they're already carrying 8 defensemen. And they've been actually rolling with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen for the past 4 or 5 games, just because they've liked how that's been going. Forwards, I think they'd love to add a top 6 winger, whether that's a defensive forward or not. But I think as of right now, this team is probably going to be a seller at the deadline. I don't think it's worth buying at the deadline right now. But things can change. We're a month and a half away from the deadline. So, we'll talk. But for better or worse, I think this is what the team is going to look like, which is not the worst thing in the world. Like, they're in the hunt for a wild card spot right now. I believe they are at 40 points on the season, which is the same amount of points as the Ottawa Senators, who currently hold the second wild card spot, but the Senators have games in hand on them. So big couple of weeks for the Blue Jackets. If teams like, the Penguins, teams like the Senators start to fall off a little bit, then we could be having a very different conversation. But right now, my guess is that the Blue Jackets are probably going to sell at the deadline and start preparing for next year. This year was never going to be about winning. It was about seeing what you have and what you still need to add.
This team is 13-5-3 at home, 4-12-3 on the road. Any reasons for the split, and how can they improve away from home?
I mean, mostly I think it's just that hockey is voodoo sometimes, because I genuinely, and this is a question that I've been asking myself on my show, Locked On Blue Jackets, for basically the entire season, which is, how is this team so good at Nationwide, and then they go on the road and it looks like a different team? And I truly, genuinely don't understand it. Like, again, it kind of goes back to your big players are scoring at home and not on the road. And I don't know how you address that, because I don't think they're playing differently. It's the same players, it's the same systems, it's the same goaltending, it's the same coaching. Like, it's not like they're saying, well, we need to play differently because we're on the road. So I got nothing. I wish I had an answer, because then at least someone might have an answer. But right now, it just, for whatever reason, whether it's the crowds, whether it's like just some kind of, again, weird nationwide voodoo magic that happens in all hockey rinks, but it's it is by far the most frustrating part of the season is just how good this team is at home versus on the road. Like, they have, I think, the third best power play in the NHL when they're at home. And then I think they're 16th or 17th, maybe even lower, like league wide. So when you add the away power play into it, it tanks it. So I got nothing. Sean Monahan loves to score at home. Zach Werenski has like a 15-game home point streak rolling right now. They just, when they go on the road, it falls apart. And it's, again, like I said, it is by far the most frustrating part of the season is watching this team play on the road.
Hard to believe having last change would have that big an impact on a team, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, if that's what it is, then it's wild. How have we not adjusted for that yet? But there's something there. I just don't think anyone's figured quite what that something is yet.
Well, we have half a season left to try to figure that out. Jay, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yes, you can find the show anywhere you get Locked On NHL. We're free on all podcasting apps. We're over on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find me over on Blue Sky, same handle without the underscore. You can find the show on Twitter, not Blue Sky yet, at LO_Blue Jackets. And honestly, despite the frustration, the vibes are pretty good for the Blue Jackets right now. So come and hang out, and we'll have some fun.
All right, Jay, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Gil.
Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon.